We're back, people. What is up? Another nice little stream today, going over the joint practice a little bit. Dolphins have had joint practices the past 2 days versus the Detroit Lions. You've probably heard about some of the details of the first day. First day, I didn't get a chance to talk about it yet, but them getting dominated. And you guys kind of know my thoughts on that. When it comes to regular season success, doesn't really mean anything. I think the good thing to hear, though, obviously you want to hear some positive stuff, is they did bounce back in the second practice. Definitely had a much stronger day. I think that could at least, point to signs of mental toughness being better, which is good to hear. But I do think at the end of the day, when it comes to these practices, you don't want to overreact in either direction, because there is no at least direct correlation to winning practices that come into then, having regular season success. We've seen things happen and go both directions, vice versa. But at the end of the day, it is still nice to hear that they bounced back. Definitely a more positive day. We'll see how it, we'll go over some of the specifics. There's too many notes to go over every single note that was brought up in the past 2 days, but we'll go over some of it, some of the players that stood out. And then I want to go over go over some of my preseason takeaways, because I've made a lot of film breakdowns this week. I posted Matt Dickerson today. You can watch my, all my film breakdowns throughout the week. But there's some things I want to talk about where you can learn a lot from preseason games with how long people play into the fourth quarter, who rotates in early. I feel like I've learned a lot about the depth chart and how the Dolphins are seeing things from that first preseason game, and I want to go over that. And then also, we'll probably start with some of the injury stuff. I would say the biggest news of the past 2 days is that Chop Robinson is good. He was back out at practice today. There was a practice scare the first day. To me, that was the biggest thing that I was scared about, was just hoping Chop was good, because that would have been devastating. Not necessarily the bad practice, Chop going down, but he did return, so that's big. I know Achane and Sealer didn't practice today, but there hasn't been any reports really about them other than them not practicing. So I think Sealer and Achane are probably just a little banged up. Didn't want to risk that. Hopefully they're good. A lot of the Dolphins players, best players, haven't been practicing. Tyreek didn't practice. Waddle was limited yesterday, but practiced more today. Phillips hadn't been practicing. So a lot of their best players had missed some times. And when you're going against the Lions, who are one of the best teams, and I actually think if the Dolphins played the Lions in the regular season, I think the Lions would be one of the teams that give them the hardest struggles, especially from the Dolphins defense. I think the Lions offense is one that could counter them. But overall, nice to see them bounce back. Waddle's the difference. Yeah, definitely a big help. What's up, Gran? Yeah, for me, it's you don't want to hear negatives when it comes to practices like that. You don't want to hear you just getting blown out. But I do think there was, a bit of an overreaction, people acting like the season was over. There's not really a direct correlation, practice is about learning. I actually think it's not necessarily a bad thing for them to have this learning experience during these joint practices, because I think it's better to get beat down early and see if you can respond later, rather than what the Dolphins have kind of had in the past, where they start strong and then kind of get beat down later on in the season. I would rather have it be the opposite. So we'll see if they can respond. They did respond in this joint practice, the second one, but we'll see if that can end up carrying into the season. I think that's sort of the interesting part, but go through the notes 5. Yeah, it'd be so long. What's up, Timothy? Chubb is part-time practicing? No, I think Chubb is back. I didn't see anything about Chubb part-time. I think he was practicing in full today. He was getting interviewed today. I saw some of his quotes. He was talking about how it's nice to have a strong day after, he felt like they got to play themselves. A lot of them said that. I know Brewer said it felt like they dominated today. And then even Malik was out there kind of joking around with Mike and stuff. But yeah, lots of interesting notes. It definitely felt like they took it personal. Some fighting going on. That's always happening in joint practices, some fighting. Yesterday, it was the talk that they couldn't stop Amon-Ra St. Brown. You probably saw the highlight video of Amon-Ra St. Brown cooking a lot of the Dolphins defenders, specifically Jack Jones. I know he beat Jason Marshall on one, but Jason Marshall actually had good coverage on that play, just ended up giving it up. Lions media was way over. Yeah, the Lions, it definitely seemed like the Lions and Dolphins media weren't always on the same page with everything that's being said, but that's, that's sort of how things go. You kind of built these biases. Everyone has biases, at least to some extent. You just don't want to let it go too far. Yeah, the Chop, that was definitely a scare. Thank God. That's literally the biggest takeaway for me is Chop is good, for sure. Or is Taj Washington getting the label, or has it, or as a gadget player? I think just naturally a lot of shorter, smaller receivers get that label. I agree that he's not really that type. He's actually more of like a route running slot type, like you said. I don't think he's a gadget player at all. In talking, actually, we can start with the receiver room because I kind of want to go through each room and tell you where my thoughts are after this first preseason game, because I think some things have changed, and the receiver room I think is pretty interesting right now. So one, Eskridge and Taj I think are the talk right now for 5th and 6th if they keep 6. So Eskridge apparently had the play of the day. He had like a big end zone. He kind of mossed, I think, DJ Reed in the back of the end zone for like the biggest touchdown of the day today. Taj Washington has continued to make some plays, and also we know he had a very strong preseason opener. And for me, this is how I'm looking at it, right? I was always thinking 5 receivers for Miami just because that's what they did last year, and I think with just how the rest of the roster is constructed, I think they only could keep 5 receivers. But now with the Alexander Madison injury and the running backs they added, I think that opens up a roster spot on offense, and I really think they could keep a 6 receiver. It's not a 100% guarantee, but I think a 6 receiver becomes way more likely because the running backs they added are more like practice squad guys, like bodies for the preseason, and then guys you keep on the practice squad. And then now you just keep, Achane, Wright, Gordon, and then you keep Ingold as the fullback. I think they would have just kept Madison and all of those guys, so that roster spot, I think, gets opened, and you can now keep a 6 receiver. And to me, Eskridge and Taj are easily the front runners for that now and have kind of earned it. I think Taj is too risky to give up, to risk him on waivers. And then I think Eskridge just gives you an extra special teams value and also has been showing up in these practices and preseason to kind of earn it. And he was someone that looked kind of comfortable last year, and it seems like he's kind of built a chemistry more so with Tua as well. So to me, I think that becomes way more likely. Yeah. Well, I think Noodle, when people say gadget, they mostly mean almost like how Deebo Samuel's used. That's a gadget type receiver where he's getting the jet sweeps used in a bunch of fun ways. You're trying to get them carries and stuff. To me, Malik is a little more gadget than Taj. And Malik's not a full on gadget, but he would get more gadget usage than Taj would. Taj is more of he would actually stretch the field and type of thing. It's a lot of similar receivers. I would prefer to keep the 2 of the best UDFA guys. Yeah, for me, Alex, though, I would agree, but I think they can keep the 2 UDFAs on the practice squad. So if they really do end up developing, you can eventually, elevate them. And the practice squad's very valuable. I think Eskridge or Taj would have a better chance of leaving the team. And also, I think Waller kind of fits into that receiver category as well. He's basically just a big receiver, and he could help, the Nick Westbrook-Kine type of guys. How come we ignored CB room? I would say, David, it's not because they want to ignore it. I think they just, every team has a certain amount of resources with your draft picks and cap space. And you have to make a decision at the start of this year, at the start of the offseason. You have to make a decision where you're going to put those resources into and allocate those resources. And you have to decide hey, you can't have, great players at every spot. Every team has a weakness somewhere. And then you also have to consider the future, especially with certain things with how you're giving out contracts. And I think they looked at their team and they looked at what Weaver did. And I think they decided hey, Weaver, we're going to build you up front with your defense. And we're going to kind of not put as much of an emphasis on the secondary, specifically corner. Because last year, it was probably the position they put the least amount of pressure on. So I think they put more resources into the defensive front to then hope that helps out the secondary. And then the secondary was hey, this is the position, the corner specifically, this is the position group we kind of have to, not put as many resources in. I'm sure they'll put way more resources into it next year. But I think that's just what sort of happened because they felt like they could scheme around it on the defensive side of the ball. At least I think that's the logic behind it. I'm not saying that's what they should have done. I'm just saying I think that's what their sort of thought process is. Yeah. Gadget is Swiss Army knife, gadget. That kind of more falls into that category. That's at least how usually it's described. I can understand seeing it the other way. Yeah. Yeah, I think the Dolphins have that smaller margin of error with like the injury stuff. But I mean, I've said it. I think if Tua in the O-line is relatively healthy, I still think the Dolphins are a pretty good team. If that falls apart, then yeah, I could see more so how maybe the national media sees them. And that is a big if, so we'll see how it ends up playing out. I mean, it's impossible to predict. You get on my nerves sometimes, bro, but I respect your work in putting up. I just sub to, bro. Hey, I appreciate it, Kenna. Personally, I want to see these young DBs develop. They have the talent, skill set. Yeah, I didn't do many film breakdowns on the DBs this week because, there was only so many players I could do. So expect a lot of DB breakdowns next week. Also, DB is just the one position where, like, especially safety and, also corner, you're not involved every play. So there's so many plays where there's just like, it's a run play where it's to their side, they're not involved. So it's like there's nothing to break down in that play. And then there's plays where they're not targeted or it's a zone and like there's nothing to really break down in the play. So there just wasn't enough plays to break down film on most of the DBs. So I think in next week, I'm going to have film on guys like the young safeties. Dante Trader returned to practice and he even made some plays. I'm a big Trader fan, so I'm really excited to see him in the preseason. But I'll probably get guys like McMorris, John Saunders Jr., who created a turnover today. He had a peanut punch out, apparently. Shout out John Saunders Jr., who, that's something he did in college. So that clearly has kind of translated because he's had a couple of those now at practice. I know Patrick Paul had a strong day. He was like, had some bully reps. That's what I want to hear. Like, I feel like the soft narrative sometimes gets overplayed. Like, I understand why it's a thing, but I feel like sometimes it's almost like lazy analysis to describe why the Dolphins are the way they are and, with the troubles they've had in the past. And it's nice to still see them go out there and just play tougher, which I do think they will play tougher this season. I think mental toughness will be more of the intriguing parts. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the receiver room. I think they have a much higher chance of keeping 6 now with the Madison injury at receiver. Because I don't think they need to keep a guy like, they added Mike Boone and, what's his name, Shampklin. I think you can probably keep those guys on the practice squad, even if they end up like impressing in preseason. And to me, Taj and Eskridge are the clear-cut favorites right now. Who knows, maybe one of the UDFAs can step up big time. And I believe the starters, McDaniel said he's leaning towards the starters not playing next week. So that should give a lot of these guys, like, to me, that's what you learn most in the preseason is like guys fighting for their life roster spot and like who belongs. Because you're not playing, high-end NFL level talent, but you are playing against guys that like are rosterable talent or guys that aren't rosterable talent, and you got to be able to show yourself as rosterable. Greer did the same thing with the guards. I would have drafted Will Johnson around 1. See, but then David, I think people then would have complained about injuries because Will Johnson, the reason he wasn't drafted around, who I agree is a great talent, the reason he wasn't drafted is because of injuries. Long-term effects. Like they don't think he's going to have a long career because of, so I'm sure he dropped off their draft board, and we know how most of us have complained about injuries. I mean, I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, he should have taken this guy after all the times we've, gone after Greer for the injury stuff, even though I do think Will Johnson's a great player. Yeah, I like Pat McMorris as well. Yeah, the Cam Smith pick hurts for sure. McMorris, I'm excited to do McMorris next week. There just wasn't enough plays, but I will say he did get the pick, which was lucky. He also was the one giving up the touchdown, which I think was a not even that bad of a play from him. It was just a great play from the offense. But just watching him on a play-to-play basis, even the plays where he's not necessarily involved, he just looks like an NFL level player. You can just tell by guys like that get to the right spot, the way they move and some of this stuff. You're like, oh, that guy is definitely someone who should be on a roster at least. Safety position's interesting right now because, I think Ashton Davis will get put on like that short-term IR. Elijah Campbell did return, and then you have Trader back now, so Trader's kind of a part of that mix. And even John Saunders Jr., he's made some plays. Some other things just seemed like, the 7-on-7, they had some big plays. I think the first time the Dolphins went out on team, they maybe started a little bit slow, but they definitely responded with some touchdowns. I know Malik had like a 15-yard touchdown. Eskridge had that big play. Yeah. And Malik got every time he was in the game, he touched the ball in that preseason game. He got every touch every time he was in the game. Shout out Malik, that's my guy. Clearly very comfortable with him. Is Mike Hilton even out there? Yeah, I've seen him in reports. I think Storm Duck had like a dropped pick 6. I see Bonner had a breakup. There's just so many notes to go over. Like, I don't even know. And like, you got to take all these notes with a grain of salt sometimes. I know Melifonu was going at it with Jameson Williams. Amon Ra was, cooking Jack Jones. That's expected though. When is first cut day, and do you think we'll pick up a few players in? I actually don't know the date, so I would be speculating, but I think it's very likely. I actually put out a tweet. We just talked about the receivers. Let's go to the tight ends then, because this is something I've thought about the tight ends now after I've thought about this about the tight ends for years, and now I think it even more after the first preseason game. That is a position after the cuts that I think should be very high on the Dolphins priority list. If they're gonna claim someone, tight end, especially someone that could block, should be higher on their priority list. You should be looking for anyone that has some blocking ability at tight end, because I think it's so important to the Dolphins scheme. And one thing I learned, they brought in Pharaoh Brown to block, and I don't think he didn't play horrible in the preseason game, but I don't think he played very good either. Sometimes you have to notice how long players are playing into these preseason games. Guys that could be seen as potential players. Brown was playing late into the fourth quarter, which is not usually a good sign for you overtaking a starting spot. Tanner Connor and Julian Hill got a lot of the early work. Waller's still not out there. And then after that, you saw guys like Hayden Rucci, Chris Myrick, but overall was not really impressed with the tight end group. Honestly, Tanner Connor probably played the best out of the group, and even then that wasn't saying much. So tight end for me would be a huge priority if I'm Miami. I think tight end and offensive tackle depth. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about it. Jermaine Ifedi got put on IR, and they signed, I always forget how to pronounce his name, but it's Yodny. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, so it's in the title though. You can read it. So you can read his name. I remember watching him coming out of West Virginia, I believe. He was a third rounder, I believe, and he hasn't played in the last couple years. But I will say, I would say from watching his film, he has a better chance of making the team than Ifedi ever did. I was not a fan of Jermaine Ifedi. I'm not really a fan of Yodny either, but he has a better chance than what Ifedi brought. We'll see how it ends up playing out. The depth tackle spot has me concerned. I think Keon Smith just doesn't look like he's returned to health coming off the ACL, and that's definitely not ideal. I actually feel better about the interior line than the tackles. You got to hope the tackles stay healthy, because Paul and Jackson would actually be pretty good in this system, but Jackson has that real injury history. Chop is back. Yeah, Chop back. Huge. Absolutely huge. Tanner Connor's blocking was due to Verspirits, bad angles, timid, lack of contact over and over. Oh yeah, I agree. And he was still probably the best of the bunch. I mean, they were all bad. I would just say Connor looked the best as receiver for sure, which obviously makes sense because he's a former receiver. He should have had a touchdown if Zach didn't miss him horribly, but either way, they were all bad. Didn't Ifedi get put in the spin cycle last preseason game? I don't recall that, to be honest. But could be. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, Dolphins started pretty hot. Defense had some plays. Trying to find this. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, Minko had a really strong 2 days. I know he was one of the guys that definitely competed both days. Yeah, there was a couple Dante Trader mentions of him getting some hits on players, which is nice to hear. It wasn't like the Lions did nothing. I know Goff had a touchdown to Jameson Williams over Kendall Sheffield. It looked like. I'm still not sold on Kendall Sheffield as a starter, but we'll see what happens when it comes to regular season. How it ends up playing out. I know Kenneth Grant had a strong day. Big fan of Kenneth Grant. I'm a big fan of Kenneth Grant. But yeah, that's sort of seems like that's where things are at. I mean, I would just, if you guys have more, want to ask me specifics about practice, I can go over that. But I think that's kind of the gist of it. Really bad first day. Really bad. I understand why people are upset about it, but I don't think it's something you should overreact and think the season's over. Practice is about learning. It's never been a good predictor of regular season success. It is nice to hear that the Dolphins responded. It's also another thing you shouldn't overreact about in the opposite direction, being we're back. I mean, I understand wanting to, but yeah, just nice to hear they at least the Dolphins players showing some fight. That's sort of my takeaway from the 2 days. But yeah, I kind of want to go over some of this 53 stuff. So we can let's go to the D line, because D line is pretty interesting as of now. I think you keep 5, and I think you're locked in 4. And then it comes down to, I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts, because I've seen some people go back and forth with the D tackle 5 that they want to keep. Because you got Matt Dickerson, who's the vet, and I would say is the guy he had a really good preseason week 1, in my opinion. I just dropped the video on him today. He's the one who, if he had to play, I would feel most comfortable with him playing right now. But then you have Zeke Biggers, who is the one that has the most upside, the young guy. To me, it comes down to who they think if they think they can keep Zeke on waivers or not. If they think they can keep him through waivers and get him on the practice squad, I think they will do that. But if they think that he will get claimed, then they won't risk it. And I think they're just gonna be like, hey, if we need to, we can elevate Dickerson from the practice squad and, do it throughout the season. And if injuries happen or something, which, usually someone gets injured, you can end up elevating someone. They could take over a roster spot, whatever. And to me, and then I think Butler's name you also have to throw in there. I wasn't super impressed with Butler, but based on just like how they rotated in and out of the game, Butler is in the conversation. Ben Stilley is probably after that. He was coming in late to the game, but I think right now it leans towards Dickerson and Zeke Biggers as of right now. And I think they keep 5. I just don't think they have enough numbers to keep 6. They could keep 6 initially. So there's also that sort of thing. They could keep 6 initially. And then, there's always ways to work around the roster. You cut your long snapper, and then maybe you put someone on IR that needs to go on IR, and then you end up keeping 5. And then you're able to sneak one of them on the practice squad. That's also a way things work out. Travis Etienne for a 5th rounder? No, thank you. I'm not a big Etienne fan, and I don't think they need running backs, to be honest. Thoughts on Bonner CB2? I mean, I would rather see Bonner out there than Kendall Sheffield. Braden Daniels had good scores against Chicago. Your thoughts? Yeah, you'll see my breakdown tomorrow. I have 2 videos out tomorrow. It's a Willie Gay and KJ Britt combined video. So I go over Willie Gay and KJ Britt in one video together because I think they're both going to play this season as your depth linebackers, and they're going to have very specific different roles. And then I also plan to do a Braden Daniels video tomorrow. I will say this, spoiler alert, out of the backup O-linemen, I thought Braden Daniels was pretty easily one of the best. Like, especially like the third, like when he was out there with the third strings, he was easily the best of the bunch. Like, he had a much better game than most of those guys. Yeah, cut Butler. Yeah, I think they cut Butler, but I think they have to cut too. It might come down to who they will get claimed. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. They're gonna have to predict. In the past, the Dolphins have cut some 7th and 6th rounders before, and they did get claimed. Remember, they lost Elijah Higgins. They also cut Ryan Hayes. He got claimed. He did end up coming back once he got cut from where he got claimed from. But yeah, I don't know if they want to risk that. And I think, Zeke, actually, there's some upside there. I just think Dickerson, like, if he did have to play snaps, would be more pro-ready as of now. Because the locked 4 are Sealer, Grant, Benito, Phillips. Yeah, those guys are locked. I would be surprised if they cut either of their 4s. I guess Benito Jones could be the surprise veteran cut, but I don't see that happening. Yeah, you could also trade. I wouldn't be surprised to see some like back-end roster trades, like Dolphins trade one of their guys that maybe is like on the edge of the roster for someone else's edge of the roster player that they need more at a position, maybe tackle, corner, tight end. Who makes it, McClendon or Cameron Good? We can go to edge next. So edge, to me, I think Phillips, Chop, Chubb, obviously locked in. I think Quinn Bell is not for sure, but I also think he's pretty locked in just based on his snaps and what he played last year. I think you keep 5 edges, and that's 4 right there. So to me, it comes down to, really, it's more than just those 2. It's McClendon, it's Muhammad Kamara, who hasn't played yet. He'll have to show up big time. I bet he was a 5th round pick last year, so you have to keep him in the conversation. Grayson Murphy, the other UDFA from last year, and he had some good plays in preseason week 1. I need to see more from Grayson, though, because there are some things I didn't like about what his game had. And then also Cameron Good, who has the more, like, Cameron Good would probably make it because of special teams. I think I prefer the other 3 if they had to play. but I think Good would have the special teams thing, and he's more of a veteran. That one's very interesting. I actually don't know. The edge room, I don't. I actually have no clue. I think that could all change in one. I think that one's so close, it could all change in like one preseason play. Like if one of them has just one crazy play, that might give them the edge. Like that's just, I think that's what could happen here. I think a lot of these guys will end up on the practice squad, but wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Kamara get claimed because he was a 5th round pick last year, and I'm sure people from other teams might still like him from the draft or something. But you could probably get, Grayson or McClendon on the practice squad, keep the other, maybe. Who knows? I really like Grayson Murphy's playstyle. I think Grayson Murphy is the best pass rusher of those guys for sure. Just sometimes I feel like he plays, like, I don't want to say lazy, but like he plays almost like, I need him to play with more urgency more often, That's sort of my issue with Murphy right now. And he, like, there's just certain plays where I feel like he's playing a little slow. Yeah. Kamara's had some unlucky, he's been unlucky with injuries this offseason because he needed to be healthy to have a fight. Yeah. Well, I think Higgins is their tight end 3 now, but yeah, he still gets work over there in Arizona. Arizona runs a lot of 13 personnel. Better hope they clear waivers. To be fair, the Dolphins haven't had a player claimed on waivers since, like, I think Elijah Higgins in 2022 or whatever season that was. I think people are more worried about players getting claimed than they actually end up getting claimed. I'm not saying it's impossible, but for the most part, there's usually like around 20-ish players claimed each year at those initial cuts, which isn't a lot. And the Dolphins haven't had anyone get claimed in a couple of years, at least at that spot. Yeah, that would suck. We'll see. A lot can change in a few weeks. Mo could go out in preseason week 2 and dominate, and he's right back in there. That's all it could take. And also, you never know with injury. Someone could get injured, and like there's an extra roster spot open. Like that. Also, what's up? Oh, the dive bar's in here. What's up, the dive bar? I missed it. The eyes. We rarely cut rookies. Yeah, we haven't cut rookies since the aforementioned Elijah Higgins and Ryan Hayes. Where it says Cameron Good says a better edge than he. Yeah, I could see that, but I just I don't have a necessarily a problem with those guys how they set the edge. So I don't know if it's enough of advantage for good in my mind, but I mean it's possible. I think Good's real advantage is special teams, to be honest. Ifedi, Bourne, and Keon Smith were so bad Sunday. Yeah, honestly, I thought Bourne wasn't too bad, but Bourne was going against better competition than Ifedi and Keon Smith because Bourne was out there with the starters and he had some plays. Let's go to the O-line, actually. Let's go to the starters. The starting O-line, they only played a little bit, but I think they looked good. James Daniels looked like he was good, which I think is a good sign. He looked like he was moving good during the game, which I think is very big coming off the Achilles. I'm obviously was expecting him to play good against that level of talent. That's expected. Brewer looked good. Patrick Paul might have been the most dominant of the bunch. Like he wasn't breaking a sweat. I already went over Jonah. Jonah had an up and down performance, but I think that was expected for the rookie. Want to see improvements. So I feel good about the starting O-line, to be honest. If Jackson's back, I feel good about that 5. In this system, I obviously am much more worried about the depth. Didn't we get a new alignment? Yeah, Yodny Cajuste. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think he has a chance with the tackle depth. He has a chance to make the team. We'll see how he plays in a regular season game. In the preseason, he hasn't played in a couple years, like real snaps. He was a pretty good prospect coming out of West Virginia, a good pass protector. I remember that. Pretty good athlete. Seems like he's a scheme fit. Like I would have signed him before they signed Jermaine Ifedi, but that's about it. Yeah. Dude, that mime, they should have. You know what? Let's go to it. Dude, let's go to the final play. They actually should have converted this. I'm on NFL Pro, so let's just pull this up. Oh yeah, I gotta go back. I'm finding this play. Boom. Boom. Okay. Oh my my god. Sorry, I knocked over my mic. But here's the one. Dude, this actually should have worked, funnily enough. Obviously, these are backups, so they're probably not even... If Ollie hits, I think it's Weiss. But look at this. There's no one. If this ball is not bounced to him, he's walking into the end zone. If he hits him at, like, standing, he's walking in. Doesn't end up working, but that actually would have been so funny to win that way in a preseason game. I get it. Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm saying Theo Weiss and Andrew Armstrong still have a chance. I'm just saying they fell behind after the preseason week 1 game. I just think the reason for UDFAs is since they're UDFAs, that means just based on if a team really wanted them, they would have drafted them, you know? And if they don't show out like crazy in preseason, then they usually don't get claimed. Usually UDFAs get claimed if they get cut and they're like really balling in preseason. So if he doesn't ball in preseason, you can still easily keep guys like Theo Weiss around, which I think they would if he made it through claims, which I expect him to, unless he balls out in preseason and they cut him, then he could get claimed. How do you think Trader will be used? I mean, I'm thinking Trader's going to play a lot in this next preseason game. I don't think he'll play much during the regular season unless there's injuries. But like play style wise, like I expect him to play more in like a near the line of scrimmage, play like as a robber, you know, roll down. Maybe not a lot of single high. He'll probably be back there sometimes. More like 2 high looks. He's a guy that I think you want to run the ball because he's a very consistent tackler. Reliable, smart player, he's a tough player as well, so like I don't mind having him down in the box, even though he's not the biggest safety. Yeah, I looked over at Grand, but his all of his film is back from 2022, so I just don't think it's worth it for a breakdown of him. I know Britt had a so-so game in preseason. Do you think watching the tape? I have a video out on KJ Britt and Willie Gay tomorrow. It's a combined one. I actually think KJ Britt looked pretty solid, as how you would expect him to look solid as a run defender. I think he did his thing versus the run, which, you know, in between the box, he's a solid run defender. And that's where he'll bring value to the team. Don't expect much from him in coverage, but yeah. There are some players that, like, when you watch the game live, like Derek McClendon, Grayson Murphy, I think when I watched the game live, I thought they had better games live than when I watched the film. I still think they played solid on the film, but I think some of McClendon's like big plays came on just like the offense leaving him unblocked and stuff like that. So McClendon's one that like I hadn't seen much before this game, so I want to see more. And I'm excited to see if he can continue that and even have more impressive reps and wins. That will be a huge development for him, I think, in making the team. Same with Grayson. Yeah, David, that's a good point that I don't think I mentioned yet. But Amon-Ra had a lot of production against them, and a lot of that did come in, like, you know, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, but a lot came on 1-on-1, and it's like, I don't expect any of our corners to cover Amon-Ra, St. Brown on 1-on-1s. I think it's expected for them to lose. Receivers are already favored enough in those drills, so the fact that our corners are losing, like, yeah, when it comes to a game, our corners should be put in better positions, less 1-on-1s, your defense should be trying to get pressures. That's why I'm like, I'm not worried about our DBs losing 1-on-1s. Like, that's, I totally expected just based on the talent level. Do you think we can cut Quinn and get him on the practice squad? I don't think they risk it, Elwood. I really don't think they do that. And I will say, I said this during the game, and I think the film watch approves it and approved what I thought. Like, even though Zach Wilson performed better statistically, I think Ewers actually gave me, not necessarily like that he played better. I don't want to, like, to me, it's not about the results and how you played overall. I'm looking at specific, like traits and like very specific things you're doing in the game and how that would translate to future success within the system. And with how Ewers played, I thought he at least attempted to play within the system. He threw the ball with anticipation and timing. Now, it didn't work. Guys were not open at all. There were some drops. He made some bad plays. Like, I think Zach and Ewers both need to work on their footwork a lot. I think their footwork is both weak. But coming away from the game, I felt like, oh, Ewers has a better chance of being a better backup in the future for Miami than Zach, just based on like the timing, I think Zach held on the ball way too long, even though he made more big plays. But I also think a lot of the big plays made were guys being wide open. But yeah. But either way, they both need to improve a lot. And they won't cut Zach, like, based on money. Britt could get cut. I don't think they shouldn't cut Britt. I guess he could. That he's not like a for sure lock, but he shouldn't get cut. But I guess I could see, unless they think they prefer someone over on him for special teams, I think Britt could actually play regular season snaps over all the guys behind him. Yeah. That's why I think for preseason, like the film is super important for instead of like stats. It's the same thing. Like sometimes things can be, sometimes stats can be very misleading. Sometimes they're right on, but sometimes they can be very misleading. What else did I want to talk about? Talked about the injuries. Talked about that. Which positions groups did I not go over yet? Yeah, I think running back's pretty set in stone. I think, Mike Boone and Aaron Shamklin will be preseason guys. You'll probably see them a lot in preseason now because you won't see as much of the starters. Like, I don't know if we'll see Achane again at all. Jalen Wright will probably get early work and then come out. And then you'll probably see a lot of Ollie Gordon. And then late fourth quarter, you'll see a lot of Mike Boone, Aaron Shamklin type thing. I think they're more practice squad guys. I think they're scheme fits. And, I don't know. I don't have any more thoughts on them other than that. I think I think those pickups show that they have faith in Ollie Gordon because I think they're expecting Ollie to replace what they expected out of Madison because Mike Boone and Shamklin are nothing like Madison. That's sort of where I'm at with that. DBs need to see more with the whole secondary. I thought they showed some stuff though. Jason Marshall Jr. I thought was actually pretty impressive in his limited snaps, so I'm excited to see more of Jason Marshall Jr. I think Cam Smith is back practicing, so we'll probably see Cam Smith out there. I think Isaiah Johnson had a strong game. I think the UDFAs need to step up, like BJ Adams and Ethan Robinson, if they want a chance to stick around, even on the practice squad. John Saunders Jr., I think out of the safeties, I think John Saunders Jr., maybe Addison West, Eugene Asante, and AJ Henning. Those UDFAs were probably the UDFAs that performed the best. But I don't know if any of them actually stood out enough as of yet. I still think they need to pick it up if they want a chance. Excited to see Trader. I thought Bonner looked good in his limited snaps. He forced that interception pretty much. And Bonner, I think a good sign for Bonner is he did not play a ton. He rotated out pretty quickly. Like he didn't play a ton in the second half, if I remember correctly. I can actually check. Let me go to NFL Pro and see when his last snap came. Because the fact that he rotated out early is a good sign for him. He only played 19 snaps. And yeah, he only played the opening kickoff of the second half on special teams. That's it. So yeah, he only played the first half. Very good sign for Bonner and how the coaching staff use him. Very good sign. Because in my opinion, based on play that I've seen on the field, on all of these guys, I'm taking preseason over the last couple of years and regular season when Bonner played. I feel better about Bonner than most of the young guys. To me, it's like Storm Duck and him at the top that I think have a chance out of the UDFAs. Then probably like Isaiah Johnson. But we'll see how it rolls around. Asante can make it over it. Yeah, for special teams, I think that's the way Asante makes it. That's why I think Asante is actually probably one of the better UDFAs with a chance because he actually ran around and made some plays, but mostly because of special teams. He would probably be a better special teams player than KJ Britt, but KJ Britt, I would like if we had to put a linebacker in a game for like a regular season game, I would much rather have KJ Britt than Eugene Asante at this point. Let's hope, yeah, of course, we don't want to see the backups at all. Is our scheme failing? Offense seems bad lately. I don't know if it's, I think, are you talking about like in the practices? I know it's tough to say. It's always tough to judge the practices without context of the situations because one, the beat reporters don't even have the best views of these plays, and then sometimes you have to understand like coaches sometimes in practices put your players in bad positions on purpose. Also, a lot of the Dolphins' best players aren't practicing, so it's tough to say if it's a scheme without me having my own eyes on it, you know? And in preseason games, you are not running anywhere near close to your regular scheme, so that's pretty much impossible to judge. Okay. Yeah, Achane looked really good too. Achane looked very comfortable. He got a few carries, and he was like I think he like had like 3 carries, but he looked very comfortable on that opening drive behind that starting line. That's the key to success this season offensively, in my opinion, is the run game. So, all right, can you clear up what did Coach Manuel do that Ramsey feels so disrespected? Oh, I mean, I have no idea what the actual like why they don't like each other is thing. I've seen like the speculation about like I think McDaniel called out Ramsey at one of the meetings and Ramsey didn't like it or something, and I don't know. Personally, I saw that quote, and I think when I read the quote, I was like, oh, Ramsey's taking a big shot at McDaniel. And then I watched the video, and the way he like put that sentence together, I actually don't think he was taking much of a shot. Maybe a little bit, but like I don't think it was anything crazy. And either way, like I don't really care. But yeah. So your link to your PayPal, is that still active? Oh yeah. That one is good. Is there ski? Because he was calling out Ramsey, but not Tyreek. I don't know. It's tough to say without being there, you know? It's just all speculation. I'm sure it all played out slightly different. Lions are a great team too, yeah. Lions are one of the best teams in the league, and also I think the Lions would be one of the teams, like I mentioned, like if the Dolphins had to face the Lions, I think that's the type of team that would give the Dolphins trouble because they have a very good O-line, and that would slow down the Dolphins' D-line, and they also have a good run game, their play action, and that's how I think you would attack the Dolphins' defense is using play action, giving the quarterback extra time, and then that's how you pick apart our secondary. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with those things. What position group have I not gone over yet? Yeah, I'm worried about the backup tackles. Pretty much pointless talking about some of these players. Talked edge, off-ball linebacker. I don't think there's much to say. I think Daquan Jackson made some plays. He made some plays in the last preseason last year. He could go practice squad again. I think Eugene Asante is someone to keep an eye on. We'll see if he can improve throughout the preseason because he was at least running around hitting people, playing tough. Still have question marks with his instincts, but special teams for him. And yeah, that was like most of the positions, right? Special teams. Honestly, one of the biggest takeaways from the preseason was the special teams looked way more comfortable. Now, I don't know if that actually will translate to the regular season. Who knows? But you got to think, I would say, if I had to guess, special teams is probably the best at translating from preseason to regular season, right? Because special teams is usually filled with backup players anyways. And like a lot of the guys that are out there on special teams would typically be out there on special teams in a regular season game. And, you know, it's the same kickers and punters, same returners. So for the most part, so I think that probably translate pretty well if I had to just guess. So I think that's a good sign because Dolphins special teams has been horrid. But during that game, they made tackles before the 25 on kickoffs. They had their kickoff returns went like pretty consistently to the 40. Their punt returns were pretty solid. They made tackles. I don't know. Yeah. You didn't or may not have talked about it back QBs from yesterday and today. Talked about backup QBs from yesterday. I mean, in what way? Like in the practices? Because I know Zach definitely struggled. I think the backup QBs did better today, but I know Zach like threw a bunch of picks yesterday. I don't know. I just don't know if there's much to say other than what I mentioned earlier about them with the preseason stuff. Yeah, Daquan and Asante. I just think they're practice squad guys. I think you can just easily get those. In my mind, I think those guys easily clear waivers, and you can easily get them on the practice squad. So I wouldn't risk cutting someone like, you know, KJ Britt, who's actually, you know, someone I think can at least do something solid at the NFL level in a regular season game. He's at least a quality run defender, and I can at least bring some value to your team. Yeah. I didn't see a lot about yours. I know Wilson struggled. I think he did better today. I saw some reps, like he had like a strike to Weiss down the field. He had he threw a touchdown to Taj down in red zone. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see a ton about them other than that. Because I think during these joint practices they do a lot of first team versus first team because they want to get a lot of first team reps. Because in the preseason it's going to be a lot of the backups and third stringers. Any injury updates? Seems like today there was no injuries during practice. Thank God. But today Achan and Sealer didn't practice, so that is something to keep an eye on. Sealer was still out there, but he wasn't in pads. I'm assuming since it wasn't really mentioned that much during the actual practice itself, that like the injuries didn't happen during practice, or like it wasn't even mentioned. I'm assuming it was nothing major. They just wanted to hold out Achan and Sealer just to be precautionary. Those are two guys that we don't really need to see practice anyways. We know what to expect out of them, and they're not gonna like just keep those guys healthy. There are certain guys that are like, yeah, we just keep them healthy. Waddle was back. Cam Smith's back practicing. Dante Trader's back practicing. He's made some plays. I love hearing Trader out there. Honestly, like Trader's not a guaranteed spot to make the team. I think as long as Trader goes out there and looks solid in the preseason, like he doesn't have to do anything special. I think he makes the team just being a 5th rounder this year. But 5th rounders aren't guaranteed, and that safety room is kind of tough. Like you have some bodies there. I'm hoping they keep him though, and I think he will do enough to keep himself. It's just he hasn't practiced or played, so it's tough to say for sure. Jack Jones. I think he played better than he did yesterday, from what I've seen. And like he at least had some stops. It seems like yesterday he couldn't get a single stop for Amon Ra, but it seemed like today he was getting some stops. Like one play mentioned was like him gaining depth down in the red zone. You know, like basically how it was explained was was this play that happened actually in the preseason game. I can actually find it and show it, because how it was explained, it sounded exactly like this. And I think this is one of Jack Jones' strength. I think putting him in a situation where he has to play like, you know, man-to-man, press man, that's not really the strength of his game. Like, it doesn't surprise me that he's losing those reps. Let me see if I can find this. No. Is this it? Let me see. Trying to find the rep. I think this actually might be it. Yeah, here we go. Yep. This rep right here. So if you look at Jack Jones, top of the screen, does a really good job. He finds number 20 from across the field. He's playing, it looks like Dolphins are playing like variation of like cover 2 down the red zone. He plays the flat and then gains depth and forces the guy out of bounds, taking away some stuff. Because he's the flat defender, and it is tough kind of ass. He is able to find this, ball gets floated up, and he's able to gain enough depth to make it tough down in the end zone. At least that's how it sounded like it was described. It's just nice to have film again, man. Taj is sick, yeah. I would say from that preseason game, Taj, Estridge, they were both like, I think they were, Malik and Nick Westbrook-Ikini were the first 2 receivers in, which makes sense. I think they're 3 and 4. But then after that, it was Eskridge and then Taj. So Taj was technically the 6th receiver. Not counting Reek. Obviously, counting Reek and Waddle, obviously they didn't play. So he was the 4th receiver in, 6 total if you count Reek and Waddle. I think if they keep, like, they should keep, I think they're at the point where they kind of are looking at keeping 6, at least initially 6. To keep both Eskridge and Taj. But if they keep 5, it seems like that battle right now is between Eskridge and Taj. And I would probably keep Taj in terms of upside and thinking like he can be a little more something. Eskridge is probably a safer bet, and he can bring some a little more special teams like return ability, but I don't know. I like Taj a lot. I think the Dolphins need more receivers that are backups that can beat man-to-man coverage consistently, because I think Malik and Nick are very good versus zone, and they're going to get a lot of grinded out yards. They're going to pick up some yak. They're going to be smart players, or you're going to have them do dirty work. And then like Tyreek and Waller are the guys that can beat man. But behind them are more guys who are more like, you know, complementary receivers. Having a guy like Taj, who I think is 1 year better man beating receivers, would be very helpful, I think, in that room. Who will carry Finn's O or D? I actually have no idea. It will probably change week to week, like how it always is with the Dolphins. Like 1 week the offense plays great, the next week the defense plays great. It feels like it's very rarely one or the other, or both at the same time. It's always one or the other. I just think the wide receivers are small again. Yeah. Well, I think Nick Westbrook-Ikine helps, and then I think another thing people are kind of forgetting is Waller is basically a big receiver for you, so he would be like kind of. I'm considering kind of him a part of that group. So he gives you, I think, a little bit of leeway, leeway to carry some extra small receivers if you're your best guys, you know? Like, I just think you keep your best guys. The sun god, yeah. Yeah, Amon-Ra. I think all the kids' names are named after, like, Egyptian mythology gods, right? They got, like, I know one of the, like, there's Osiris, St. Brown, Equanimous. The Browns would pick up Quinn. I don't know if they would, honestly. Someone else probably would. The Browns got too many. They got too many bodies. Their problem isn't having enough bodies. Their problem is they got too many bodies, and none of them are really, you know, guys you want to have as your starters. Yeah. But I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. There's probably something I missed. But yeah, I think that was. I am excited that the Dolphins bounce back, but you know, at the end of the day, it is still practice both days, whether it was positive or negative. Hopefully, they just like learn something from it, and can continue to learn into the regular season. We'll see how that ends up playing out. I just don't think there's any actual correlation from practice success or non-success to then that leading to the same thing in the regular season, because we've seen it all, you know. Horace McConville. Yeah. That'd be sick. I know my mythologies. Lee Brown's lonely, keeping Flacco relevant. Yeah. Any final questions? Yeah, this will be. Yeah, I posted a Matt Dickerson breakdown today. Tomorrow there will be 2 breakdowns. There will be a combined Willie Gay and KJ Britt video, the backup linebackers, and then there will be also a Braden Daniels video, which I still have to record. But the KJ Britt, Willie Gay one's already recorded. It's like members only right now. And then Saturday is the game. Saturday I'll be live for the game again, and then we'll return Sunday. Hopefully that was a problem last week. The All 22 came out way later than I expected, just based on how the rest of the All 22s came out. I don't know why they released it so late for the Dolphins. So hopefully it's out Sunday morning like it was for the other teams for the most part. It was out early in the morning. It didn't come out till like 4 o'clock the next day. So if it's out early, I'll probably have multiple breakdowns after. I played Smite, so I know a little too. Yeah, I grew up, like the first book series I ever read was Percy Jackson, which is like Greek mythology. So I read a lot of mythology stuff growing up. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, that should be it for today. See you guys soon enough. Thank you guys.